Gee, I feel like Oprah. Well, what's on your playlist? I'm sure you're geeked out about music too.
Yeah, I guess it kind of changes every week. I've been back to kind of the drawing board for me from what I was first inspired by, I guess, Elliott Smith.
Oh,
A lot of Nick
good stuff.
Drake, getting back to just the
all
core.
the people that off themselves. That's
Yeah,
really,
exactly.
It's kind of scary.
It's something about Sparkle Horse as well, you know, just something about that is intriguing to me. Not anything I'd imagine myself doing, hopefully. I don't imagine myself getting to
You're
that
okay
point.
though. We don't need to send you to
No,
therapy or
I'm
anything.
good. I'm
Okay,
good for now.
You
Yeah.
seem like a nice enough, charming young man. Even though you did drop out of school, I'm a teacher. I'm like, you know.
I know.
Yeah, well, that's okay. You're doing fine. You went to the College of Rock and Roll Knowledge, didn't you? Yes.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yes, and you're no stranger to Chicago. You actually played Lollapalooza, which is as
Yeah,
big
we
as it
did.
gets
We did
here.
Lollapalooza again this year, which was a blast. And I've been back to Chicago, you know, every few times. We did the Riviera earlier in the year, 2 nights, and Chicago just a beautiful scene for
It's a great
supporting
city.
music.
And we love music here, so we love you. So it's a good thing. It all works out fine, Sameer. Now, how do you feel about playing live, like especially like Lollapalooza, which is just huge? I mean, it's gigantic. And then you go to the House of Blues, it's much smaller. Is it a real different experience for you as an artist?
Most definitely. I mean, there's actually, it's ironic that the bigger the stage is, I feel like the harder or the easier it is to get on stage and perform.
Yeah.
Because there's so much of a buffer in between you and the audience. And, you know, the creative hand is like obscured by all this stuff in between.
And there's technology and,
And
all
there's
that
technology
other stuff.
and so we released our second studio record in January. In November, we decided that, you know, the year previous, we decided to go in and just do secret shows at tiny bars and clubs. And it was an amazing experience from, you know, going from that when we first started to getting used to theaters and then festivals and sheds. It's much more intimate experience. And I feel like you learn a lot more as a musician. I feel like every large band out there should do it. And obviously like Rolling Stones, Tom Petty, they go and do random bars every now and then. I think it's important.
Foo Fighters are playing tonight up at Cubby Bear.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's great. You know, I saw Paul McCartney in a small club once, and he loved it. But he said too, it's a little more nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Because you're like closer to the audience. Almost, I don't want to say naked, but you know, you're just closer to the audience.
Exactly.
There's not as much in between there. Now, one of the things I teach my students is that everything changes. That, you know, if you think you've figured out the music business or how you make music, how you record it, how you distribute it, that will all change. What are the changes you've seen, and do you think they're good or bad?
You know, we released our first album in 2009, and physically in 2010. So in even that short period of time, a lot has changed. You know, I think at that time, alternative radio and the space that radio was in was getting to something new, and Spotify wasn't even really a thing at that point. There were people, you know, subscribing to different services, but it was in between the record cycles that Spotify really started coming up, and actually towards the end of our first cycle. It's a scary thing when you try and think about, you know, your personal gain, and you're trying to think about you know, how much money you'd be making, I guess. There are a lot of bands who come from a previous generation who are used to, you know, being able to sell records and not have to go on tour for that long. But, you know, we were born and bred in this internet generation as a band, and so we kind of just embrace it as a part of things. So that's why I'm on the road, you know, pretty much 250 days out of the year, if not more. So, you know, it's just something you have to get used to.
Is it hard to have a life when you're on the road that long?
It's very hard. You know, I'm pretty young still. I'm 25, and I got signed when I was 18. And at that point, it was much easier because I, you know, wasn't really attached to much, and I, you know, obviously just read. I'd been reading obviously a lot of Jack Kerouac, and I was obsessed with trying to get on the road and involve myself.
So you did read
well, not
when you
as
were in
much
college
of the
then, okay? So that's good.
Oh, I do. I love reading, but yeah, I mean, something about that really resonated with me. And as you grow older, I mean, I feel like I've aged so much just on the road. There's a lot less that you're willing to stomach, and I'm just seeing how long I can take it. You know, right now I'm fine, and hopefully I'm good for another couple of years, several years. We'll
Right.
see.
Yeah, I was just telling my students the other night that I remember back in the singer-songwriter day in the early 70s that songwriters like 28 years old were writing songs about, I'm so old, I've aged so much. But when you live like that, you do feel like you've aged a lot.
Yeah.
You're sort of on warp speed there, you know. But it's funny you mentioned books because you once said something about how, you know, you write a book and it ends up different than what you set out to do. Does that happen with your music?
Yeah, I think in part because we're a full band and we're fully democratic with everything that we do. It's not like a singer-songwriter thing, although that sometimes would be easier. I feel like we are greater than the sum of our individual, our sum is greater than our individual parts. And there's something ephemeral about that you can't really place, and it's hard. I mean, I think the second record, we didn't really have a specific idea musically. I think it was just broad discovery, and we're still a pretty young band, and we found ourselves kind of getting into this thematic niche, and for me at least, like directly tied to music and or novels and my lyricism writing. When we first started working on the lyrics for the record, I was reading a lot of Tolstoy, reading Anna Karenina. And yeah, Tolstoy is amazing in that he's like this perfect lens and just tells the objective story in some weird way without injecting too much style. And I almost had like I was not really into style at that point. And I think that was my intent, and I'm not sure if that really worked or not, but at the end of the cycle, or at the end of the creation of the record, I realized obviously there was no way to get away from style. Lyricism is so much more like poetry than it is like writing a novel, at least in terms of the actual words.
Now, you surprised me with the Tolstoy reference, because considering your musical influence, I would have picked you to be a Dostoevsky guy.
Yeah, a little bit darker. I mean, I really switch. I keep on switching around.
So you got that reading bug, though, at least when you were in school.
Yeah.
If not the diploma, you got that reading bug. That's
yes.
good.
I feel like I started reading a lot more after school.
Yes, isn't that funny how that
Yeah.
happens? All of a sudden you want to do your homework. My mother told me if I did my homework in school like I do in my career, I'd have been a Rhodes Scholar, but it's after the fact. What are you reading now?
I just finished a Salman Rushdie book, Midnight's Children, which is awesome.
See, they read too.
And I picked up a new Milan Kundera book, Immortality, and he's amazing because he's a Franco-Czech writer. And he also has like some kind of self-help books on writing, because I also like writing fiction.
Oh, really?
And he has a book called The Curtain, and it's about understanding your artistic lineage and the people that come before you. So I think I'd read that right during this record, and I was like tracing the generations of rock and roll music, and I'm sure you know so much more than I do, but I was just trying to get into the rock history of the lineage before me, because a lot of artists are very ignorant to it, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think some of the best artists out there kind of cloister themselves and aren't really aware of their history.
So you're really light stuff then, like comic books. And,
Exactly. Yeah.
Is it hard to read on the road though, because you've got so many interruptions and you're exhausted? And
it can be. I just try and make a schedule for myself. I think you really cherish personal willpower when you're on the road. Because when I first started, I was 18. I'm like, I can do whatever the hell I want to do. And that was very liberating in a lot of ways. But then, a year or two down the road, I felt myself aging. I came back and got a checkup after 2 years. My blood pressure was extremely high. My knees were bad.
Sure.
And I felt like, man, I'm so young. Why is this happening to me? And I figured that it's really important to try and stick to a schedule. So I've been trying. Yeah.
Well, good, because then you won't be a casualty like some of the other great people that we've looked up to musically in the past. Now, you were talking about that second album. There's that thing called the sophomore curse. And I think sometimes you spend your whole life preparing for that first album, and then the pressure's on for you while you're working and touring and all that to all of a sudden come up with a follow-up and meet people's expectations. Did you feel that pressure?
I don't think we felt it externally. I think one thing about us is like we've always had this kind of solipsism as a group, and like we were so young when we started and we didn't know anyone, and it was just us. And I think that idea, that friendship that we have together is something that's really strong, and luckily we haven't really fallen into the traps of that fame. But I think internally for us, I think we wanted to make a mark, like James Murphy says, like make a stain a little bit on something that we're doing, not just go through the motions. So it was important for us to evolve as a band, and I think that grandiose notion of like trying to evolve was so like in us, especially because we'd been living in houses together. We lived in 4 houses together, and our last house we were living in Palos Verdes, like maybe 20 minutes away from anything. So we were just living together and breathing this thing, and the record itself is kind of about that struggle and trying to break through. Because I think everyone has that struggle, regardless of if it's a sophomore slump or a sophomore record or sophomore victory or just your job or just your life and trying to get through the day.
Sure, especially when you're successful with the first one, it's that pressure to follow up and be even more successful.
Most definitely.
That's hard. Now, you guys still friends? You get along?
Yeah.
Good.
Remarkably. It's hard because, I try and tell a lot of people, and we started out as best friends, and then you're creating something together, right, democratically, and then also you have to deal with money. And that can also break a lot of people apart, and we also lived together for such a long time. So it's a miracle, honestly, that we don't want to kill each other, but...
The band of brothers,
Yeah.
But and money does, you look at the Beatles, and they were so close, and then it was business that ultimately broke them up.
Yeah.
But they didn't lose that closeness even up
Yeah.
to the end there,
Yeah.
And I just think there's some kind of special relationship when you create and travel and live and smell each other and put up with each other's good days and bad days and share
We are brothers.
successes.
We're brothers now.
Yeah, it's family. And you're working tonight, right, you guys?
Yes, we're performing at the Park West.
That's
at
a
9
wonderful
o'clock.
room.
Yeah.
Have you done a sound check over there or anything?
We just did a sound check.
Beautiful, beautiful place. The acoustics there are really good too.
Yeah.
I tried to talk McCartney into playing there, but he blew me off. But anyway.
I met Paul McCartney once.
Isn't he wonderful?
He was absolutely wonderful. I was so scared.
My slip showing, Okay.
Yeah, we were just like kind of being courted by labels, and they normally do this. They'll put you like in a big studio, and we were in a studio in Burbank, and it was the week before Coachella, and so all the big acts were practicing, and this was the time before McCartney performed, and Jay-Z was also there. So we were doing a showcase for the record label, and we saw a bunch of hard cases that said McCartney. I'm like, is this Paul McCartney or Jesse McCartney? Because it's really different. And so we went back to the van, and we're like, getting our stuff, and then Eric, our guitarist, is like, dude, Paul McCartney is sitting right there right now. And he was right there, and he was eating an egg salad croissant sandwich.
Yeah,
and
it would be meat.
And Eric was the only one that had enough balls to talk to him. I was like this, I was so young, and I still hadn't realized that, everyone's just a person. But
no, not Paul.
And Eric said, we're such great fans of your music. And Paul said, it's great to know you have good taste.
He's good with the comeback, but he's a lovely role model, though.
Yeah.
Really. And he's 72, and he's loving it and still doing it.
He's still killing it, too.
Yeah, he is. He's not resting on his laurels. He's a great. I'm a fan.
I figured as much.
I had a few pictures taken with him over the years. Totally geeked out. There's not a good picture of me with Paul McCartney because I'm always like. But that's
I was
okay.
too afraid to even ask.
Yeah. It's good, though, to be that excited about music and the people that make music and the people we love. And you've got kids that are watching you now, and someday they want to be like you. They want to drop out of school, and I mean, they want to record and follow the dream like you followed your dream. So, and we hope you keep following your dream and keep making great music. And good luck. You should go to Park West tonight. What time do you go on?
9 o'clock.
See, you can get out of here in time, grab a drink, go over to Park
It's
West.
affiliated with Chicago Ideas Week and all that stuff.
Yeah, and even if it wasn't, go over to see him. He's really good. He's really good. And that way his family will feel good about him dropping out of school.
Yeah.
Because people are going to go see him at Park West tonight.
This is the deciding factor.
Yes, this is it. It's all in your lap, so please. But it's really a pleasure meeting you.
Nice meeting you, too.
You're very charming. Thank you.
Thank you.